Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a seriously fascinating piece of history. We're looking at the island of Cyprus, and specifically, how it evolved into this highly prosperous Roman province, but entirely kept its vibrant, deeply rooted Hellenistic soul. It's honestly a brilliant case study in how empires really operate, how cultures blend together, and how local identities can survive massive geopolitical shifts.
Okay, let's dive into this, because what we're looking at here is a story of cultural accumulation, right? Not erasure. We so often think of conquest as one culture just completely wiping out another. But the sources show us that in Cyprus, the Roman Empire didn't erase the Greek world at all. Instead, it essentially built this massive bureaucratic and infrastructural fortress right around it.
So here's our roadmap for over 400 years of history. We're going to start with Alexander and Hellenistic glory, move on to Ptolemaic rule and architecture, check out intellectual life and fashion, visit the sanctuary of Aphrodite pilgrimage, and finally wrap up with the Roman transition. Part 1. Alexander and Hellenistic glory.
You see, Cyprus was this ultimate strategic prize, sitting right there on the vital trade routes between East and West. The rapid shifts in imperial power were, well, they were turbulent, going from Alexander the Great in 333 BC over to the Ptolemies of Egypt and eventually landing in Roman annexation. But, as we'll see, these geopolitical shakeups set the exact stage for a totally unique cultural blend.
Now, before Alexander showed up, Cyprus was this mosaic of city kingdoms completely under Persian domination. But when those local Cypriot kings heard about Alexander's victories, they made a highly calculated and honestly an incredibly successful geopolitical pivot. They actively aligned with Alexander to overthrow Persian rule, bringing a massive fleet of 120 ships to help him out in the famous siege of Tyre. In return, Alexander freed them from the Persians, and this one act firmly established the Hellenistic foundation of the island, unified their currency, and basically aligned Cyprus irreversibly with the Greek world.
Part 2. Ptolemaic rule and architecture.
So, the crucial point is how this era physically and socially transformed the island. The Ptolemies came in, abolished the old city kingdoms, and unified the whole administration. And suddenly, you have the rise of these quintessential Greek institutions. Just picture it, the brilliant Mediterranean blue sea contrasting with gleaming, brand-new marble-white cities. We're talking Greek-style gymnasiums, magnificent amphitheaters, and sprawling palaces. Culturally, the old native languages faded out, and Koine Greek became adopted universally. It became the common, supranational language for commerce, administration, and everyday life.
But, and this is key, they didn't just copy and paste from Alexandria. This is a perfect example of what archaeologists call glocalization. Think of it kind of like a modern global brand tweaking its recipe for local tastes. In cities like Amathos, local Cypriot craftsmen used indigenous limestone, but they carved it to mimic those grand Corinthian marble capitals from Alexandria. They took global architectural trends and adapted them using their own local materials and stoneworking practices. It was a true physical synthesis of cultures.
Part 3. Intellectual life and fashion.
You know, a really great way to understand a culture is just by looking at its clothing. Even after the Romans eventually arrived, the people of Cyprus overwhelmingly stuck to their traditional Greek fashion. Take the Hellenistic chiton. It was this elegant, light tunic made of linen or wool, infinitely practical for that warm Mediterranean climate and worn by absolutely everyone. Now contrast that with the Roman toga. The toga was essentially a massive, heavy woolen blanket. I mean, imagine wearing that in the Mediterranean summer heat. It was this heavy, status-driven garment reserved strictly for Roman citizens, but it was so itchy and cumbersome that most people totally avoided it unless they absolutely had to wear it for a formal civic event.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how elegantly simple the chiton was. It was basically a large rectangle of fabric, folded over, draped down the front and back, and then pinned right at the shoulders. You can see how people would belt it at the waist or under the breasts to flatter the figure and manage the length. It was a breezy, highly practical garment that remained a powerful symbol of Greek identity on the island well into the Roman era.
Alongside this vibrant daily life, intellectual life completely flourished. Backed by the cultural prestige of the nearby Great Library of Alexandria, Cypriot cities like Paphos and Salamis established their own really impressive libraries. The island basically became this bustling hub for scholars studying works of philosophy and medicine. In Paphos, the Asclepieion operated as a major healing sanctuary and hospital. In fact, the famous Roman physician Galen actually traveled specifically to Cyprus later on just to study the medicinal properties of its copper ores.
Part 4. Sanctuary of Aphrodite Pilgrimage. Now, according to myth, the goddess Aphrodite rose from the sea foam right on the shores of Cyprus. Because of this, the sanctuary of Aphrodite at Old Paphos wasn't just some local temple, it was a massive, bustling, internationally renowned pilgrimage site for the ancient world. The complex was absolutely vast, and the sheer volume of pilgrims pouring in from all across the Mediterranean made Paphos incredibly wealthy and highly influential. This point from the Ashmolean Museum highlights something that's honestly mind-blowing. Just think about this for a second. From the late Bronze Age, through the Assyrians, the Egyptians, the Persians, Alexander, the Ptolemies, and deep into the Roman Empire, there was an unbroken continuity of worship at this exact site. This specific religious tradition survived the rise and fall of multiple empires for centuries. It only finally ended in 391 AD when the Roman Emperor Theodosius outlawed pagan religions entirely.
Part 5. The Roman Transition.
So, the Roman annexation in 58 BC was driven by hard pragmatism, geopolitics, and sheer financial need. A Roman politician named Clodius Pulcher, who actually had a personal grudge, pushed a law through Rome to authorize the takeover. Rome sent Cato the Younger to execute it. The last Ptolemaic king of Cyprus actually committed suicide rather than surrender his throne, which allowed Cato to liquidate the entire royal treasury. He brought a staggering 7,000 talents back to Rome. To put that into perspective, we are talking about hundreds of thousands of pounds of silver. It was an immense fortune that really highlighted just how economically vital Cyprus was.
Now, what's really interesting about this concept is that instead of crushing local traditions, the Romans cleverly utilized existing frameworks. They leaned right into the koinon. This was a confederation of Cypriot cities that originally formed to coordinate those massive religious festivals for Aphrodite. While under the Romans, this religious body was cleverly adapted into a political tool. They allowed the koinon to mint its own bronze coins and govern local religious and cultural matters. It was just a brilliant way to bridge ancient Greek religious identity with Roman administrative oversight. Just look at the details in this mosaic from the house of Eustoleus in Paphos, which was created well into the Roman period. We see the Greek god Apollo, and importantly, the text is in Koine Greek. This proves that even under the Pax Romana, that long period of Roman peace and dominance, the art, the language, the myths, and the daily culture remained distinctly, vibrantly Greek. The Romans didn't force the Latin language or Roman gods onto the local populace. They just patronized the culture that was already there.
So what is the ultimate takeaway here? Well, the Romans transformed Cyprus into a highly developed, peaceful senatorial province. They built grand fora, extensive aqueducts, and paved roads that made the pilgrimage to Aphrodite's temple easier than ever before. But in doing so, their incredible infrastructure and administrative pragmatism actually codified and protected the island's vibrant Hellenistic culture. The ancient Greek traditions thrived safely right beneath a sturdy Roman veneer.
And that leaves us with a pretty profound question. We so often view history as a series of violent replacements. But looking at Cyprus, what can we learn today from an empire that achieved centuries of stability and success, not by erasing a conquered culture, but by pragmatically synthesizing with it? It's a powerful testament to the resilience of local identity and the surprising adaptability of ancient empires. That wraps up our explainer for today. Keep exploring the sources and keep questioning history.